With rolling blackouts plunging parts of Moldova into darkness and with the gas-starved Slovakia threatening to cut off electricity to Ukraine, the EU is gripped by an escalating energy crisis. My name is Angela Scoogens. Here in the TVP World Brussels studio, I'm joined remotely by Georg Zachmann. He is a senior fellow at the Bruegel think tank. He is here to explain some of the electricity behind these power plays. Hi, George.
Angela.
So, as I just said, Slovakia has threatened to turn off some of the electricity in Ukraine, some of those supplies. This was triggered when the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky announced that he was going to not renegotiate a new contract with Gazprom. Now, Slovakia really relies on that cheap Russian gas from Gazprom. And Moldova too, how did Gazprom find itself at the center of these conflicts between these two countries?
We have a very long-standing gas relation between Russia and the Soviet Union and Western Europe. More than 50 years ago, the first pipelines were built from Siberia through then Soviet Union and then Czechoslovakia to the West. And these gas transits through the territory of what later became Ukraine and Slovak and Czech Republic have been a cornerstone of energy supplies to Western Europe for 5 decades. And they have always been contested. The transit countries have had hard negotiations with both sides, but particularly with Russia and Gazprom on transit fees, on volumes, on side deals. And in the with the war starting with Russia's first invasion of Crimea and later then the full-scale invasion, these negotiations became, of course, much more difficult. Now, it was rather surprising that the gas transit continued to this day. There was a gas transit deal negotiated under strong pressure in 2019 to make sure that gas is still being delivered to the West. So Angela Merkel at the time pushed also the Ukrainians to sign here. And what we saw is that both sides were committed to kind of merit this deal. Now, this deal ran out at the 1st of January 2025, which means that now a new deal would have to be found for the gas transit. And seemingly it was not possible to find a deal between all the involved parties, namely Gazprom Russia, the Ukrainian side, and the Western buyers, that would please all three sides sufficiently.
Is the problem that all these countries have relied on this cheap Russian gas for a long time, and has this made them vulnerable?
Yes, so the share of Russian gas in Europe has steadily increased. During the Cold War, it was always contained in order to not get dependent on Russia. But then after the end of the Cold War, people in the West felt that the economic advantages of buying more and more of this Russian gas outweighed the security risk. They were completely wrong, as we now know, but that was the spirit of the time. And by the end of this period, so in 2020, 2021, the share of Russian gas was almost half of the European gas supply. So that has caused massive security issues. And then when Russia in 2021 already started to reduce the flows to Europe, we entered into a significant gas crisis in the European Union. This was dialed up during 2022 when first the transit through Poland was killed, then the flows through Nord Stream were reduced and later on stopped in August, so a month before the pipeline exploded. And also the flows through Ukraine were constantly reduced by Russia. So it's not European sanctions on Russian gas, but it's a Russian behavior towards the European Union in order to put political pressure on the EU. Now that didn't have the desired effect for Putin and Russia. European Union maintained its unified position towards supporting Ukraine. And we are now at a situation where essentially the European Union and Ukraine are to decide what to do with the future of Russian gas flows. And the end of the transit deal was essentially one of the catalyzing or crystallizing moments to make a decision here. My feeling is that the story of Russian gas in Europe is not yet over for sure.
Yeah.
We will still have to see how how the next year will go on, and then if some strong interest to resume flows of low cost Russian gas into the European market will be stronger than any security concerns. And my strong urge would be to European policymakers to put their heads together to form a common European position on whether we want that and under which conditions we want that, in order to avoid that member states can play or are going to be played one against each other by Russia to avoid this divide and rule policy by Russia. We need a common European policy.
Question I have for you is we're aware that there will be some talks this week between Ukraine, Slovakia and the European Commission. What do you expect out of those talks, if there could be any solution found?
My understanding is that Slovakia wants to make its case that that the gas transit should somehow be continued. I would expect that the European Commission will point to Ukraine and say that this is not in the remit of the European Commission to decide, but in the remit of the Ukrainians to decide on that. And hence there will be little resolution to the issue. Actually, what happened during the past day is that one Ukrainian opposition party, so the party of President Poroshenko, issued put in a bill in the Ukrainian parliament to also stop gas and oil transit now through Ukraine. So this discussion on pressure from the Slovakian side on with electricity, and then from the Ukrainian side on gas and oil, the fights over Moldova and so on. I mean, it's going to be a quite complex picture that we are going to see during the coming weeks, I would expect.
Absolutely. And I know that Poland has made a security part of its EU Council presidency, with energy security part of that as well. Do you think that Warsaw is up to the job in figuring out a way for all of the EU member states to tackle energy security more sufficiently, perhaps, than how it has been approached in the past?
No, I think it's a very important step from Warsaw to put energy security so high on the agenda. I think we have been too slow and too reluctant in the past to find a common European policy. It's always nice and good to call for a common European policy. The challenge in the end is that there are, of course, national interests involved in energy. Everybody wants safe energy for its own consumers. Everybody wants cheap energy for its own consumers and clean energy. And the challenge is how to balance that, because many member states believe that they are getting a better deal by dealing on their own, by getting special relations with some supplier countries, and finding a way to kind of have a common framework to ensure that we don't or are not played one against each other, but commonly put our purchasing power together in order to get secure and cheap energy is going to be crucial. It will require quite some convincing, because some member states believe that they are already well supplied, and they will be less eager to share their security with others.
Yeah, and maybe they could potentially argue that it's a national competency and that they, want the cheapest energy for their constituents. I'm also aware that Moldova is a candidate country for the EU. Transnistria has been rebuking the Moldovan government's attempts to offer them energy and humanitarian aid. Could what's happening there right now put Moldova's EU candidacy status, at risk?
So what we are seeing in Moldova is still underreported. My feeling is that the Transnistria has been a region that has benefited a lot from these deals of almost cost-free Russian gas that were then transformed into electricity and sold into the West. So that has been kind of core economic component for the Transnistrian regime, and now if that is not possible anymore, I think we might see even some larger political movements in the region. Now, I'm an energy economist, so I'm not really to judge that, but my feeling is that what we are seeing there goes much further than pure energy questions. It's really bigger political questions at stake that are discussed in the framework of these energy discussions.
Yeah, it seems to be that this energy crisis is kind of representative of bigger geopolitical tensions in the region. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, Georg.
Thanks, Angela.
And thank you so much for watching. My name is Angela Scoogens. This is TVP World. Make sure that you stay tuned with more news, commentary and analysis coming up. See you next time.